She just locked us out. He trapped us inside the neighborhood. That's what Karen's son screamed into the phone as he dialed 911. Standing right in front of my gate, I was still holding the remote in my hand when I heard him say it. I blinked. What did you just tell them? I asked calmly. Karen stepped forward like she owned the ground beneath us. You cannot block access to a shared community road. Open it. Now. Shared. That word again. I looked at the sign on the wooden post beside me. My land survey number was carved right into it. The metal gate behind me wasn't new. It had been there for 3 days. Installed legally. Permits approved. Tapers stamped. And still. Here she was. It's my driveway, I said. It connects to my house. Not the HOA park. Not the sidewalk. My house. Her son kept talking to the dispatcher. Yes, ma'am. He's aggressive. He just slammed the gate. We're scared. Scared? I hadn't even raised my voice. Karen crossed her arms. You bought the small lot at the edge of the neighborhood. That road connects to our walking trail. You can't just shut it. It connects to my barn. I corrected her. 3 weeks ago, I moved into the old farmhouse at the very end of the subdivision. It was the only property not built by the HOA developer. Older deed. Different zoning. Separate access rights. Karen didn't like that. The day I moved in, she showed up with a clipboard and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. You'll need to follow community standards, she had said. I'm not part of the HOA, I replied. She laughed like I was joking. I wasn't. Now here we were. Sirens started in the distance. Karen smirked slightly. Good. Let's let the police explain property law to you. Her son lowered the phone. They're coming. You shouldn't have done that. Done what? Locked my own gate. The gate had gone up because 2 days ago I found tire tracks across my pasture. Someone had been cutting through my land to avoid the neighborhood stop sign. My grass was torn up. My fence near the creek had been bent. I installed the gate the next morning. Simple solution. Apparently, not simple enough. Karen stepped closer. If you don't open it, you'll regret it. That line sat in the air between us. I didn't answer. Instead, I pressed the remote again and the gate clicked fully shut with a solid metal sound. Her face turned red. How dare you? The police cruiser rolled up fast. Then another one behind it. 2 officers stepped out. Calm, hands resting near their belts. Karen's son ran toward them first. He locked us in. He's blocking public access. One officer looked at me. Sir, what's going on? Before I could speak, Karen jumped in. This man illegally installed a gate on community property. He's refusing to open it. We feel threatened. Threatened. There it was again. The officer glanced at the wooden post. Do you have proof this is your property? I nodded slowly. In my truck. And filed with the county. Which developer? I asked. She froze for half a second. Mr. Halbrook, she said quickly. That made my stomach tighten. Halbrook had sold the farmhouse to me personally. Not through the HOA. Not through the neighborhood board. Direct sale. And in that contract, there was one small clause most people would overlook. The officer turned back to me. Sir, can you show us your paperwork? Of course. As I walked toward my truck, Karen leaned toward her son and whispered something. I couldn't hear it, but I saw the way his shoulders straightened. The way his fear suddenly looked. Practiced. When I came back, I handed the officer the folder. He scanned the top page. His eyebrows lifted slightly. Ma'am, he said carefully to Karen. According to this deed, this entire access strip belongs to him, including the connecting trail entrance. Karen blinked. That's impossible. It's recorded with the county. Her son looked confused now. Mom. She stepped closer to the officer. There must be a mistake. That trail has been used by residents for years. I finally spoke again. Used, not owned. Silence. Wine moved through the trees behind the barn. The gate stood firm between us. The second officer walked the length of the fence line, checking the markers in the dirt. Small metal survey stakes with bright orange tops. He nodded once. It matches the county map. Karen's composure cracked just a little, so he can just block access whenever he wants. Yes, ma'am, the officer replied. It's private property. Her son stared at me like I'd stolen something from him, but I hadn't. I simply locked my own gate. Then the first officer looked back down at the paperwork. There's something else here. My chest tightened slightly. He flipped the page. This clause says the previous owner transferred full maintenance control of the trail section and revoked informal public access. Karen's face went pale. That trail, I said quietly, was never supposed to be part of the HOA. It was temporary access during construction. It expired 5 years ago. The officer looked at Karen. Did your HOA renew the easement? She didn't answer. Ma'am. Her lips pressed thin. We were told it was permanent. By who? I asked. She didn't look at me this time. She looked at the gate. Then she said something that changed the air completely. You can't do this. We already approved the playground expansion. The officer frowned. What playground? Karen swallowed. The one we're building. At the end of the trail. Right behind my barn. On my land. And that's when I realized. This wasn't about a gate. This was about the fact that yesterday, I received a letter from a contractor asking when demolition could begin. Demolition of my old wooden shed near the creek. A shed that sits exactly where the HOA's new playground was marked on their printed map. I looked straight at Karen. You already sold the project to the residents, didn't? She didn't answer. The officer slowly closed the folder and handed it back to me. Sir, he said carefully, if construction starts on your property without permission, that's trespassing. Karen's son looked at her again. Mom. And that's when she snapped. This isn't over, she said quietly. I believed her. Because the way she looked at my barn, it wasn't anger, it was panic. And panic means one thing. She already spent money she didn't have, on land she didn't own. And I had just locked the only entrance. The gate clicked again as I pressed the remote. Not to open it, just to remind her it worked. Karen thought calling 911 would scare me. But she didn't know something yet. There's a reason I rate every contract twice. And there's a reason I installed security cameras the same day that gate went up. Because 3 nights ago, someone tried to cut my fence. And I know exactly who it was. But I'm waiting. Let her make the next move. Karen didn't show up the next day. Not outside my gate. Not at the trail. Not even driving past slowly like she usually did. Too quiet. That's what bothered me. When loud people go silent, it means they're planning. Around noon, a white envelope was taped to my gate. No postage. No return address. Inside was a printed notice. HOA emergency violation. Structure installed without community approval. Daily fine. $500. I laughed out loud. They were fining me for my own gate. I pulled out my phone and took pictures. Then I noticed something else. The notice listed my address incorrectly. It had the HOA subdivision lot number attached to it, but my property wasn't part of their subdivision. They were trying to force me inside their system. That's when my phone buzzed again. Private number. I answered. A calm male voice. You've made this more complicated than it needed to be. Halbrook. I leaned against the fence. Good afternoon. You embarrassed the board. No. I said. Karen did. A pause. You don't understand the larger vision here, he continued. That trail expansion increases property values for everyone, including you. I didn't ask for it. You benefited from it. I bought land with clear boundaries. His voice hardened. That boundary can be challenged. There it was. The threat. On what grounds? I asked. Access history. Community usage. Verbal agreements. I smiled slightly. Verbal agreements don't override recorded deeds. Silence. Then he lowered his voice. You could sell the strip to the HOA. Quietly. Everyone wins. Ah. Now we were honest. So this was about money, I said. It's always about money. He wasn't even pretending anymore. I'm not selling. You might not have a choice. And he hung up. I stood there for a long moment. Then I walked back toward the barn. The old shed near the creek looked peaceful in the afternoon light. But something felt off. As I got closer, I saw it. Fresh tire tracks. Inside my fence line. My chest tightened. The gate had been locked all night. No sign of damage. Which meant someone came in from the creek side. I walked behind the shed and froze. The back wall had been marked with bright orange spray paint. And next, demolition marking. They had crossed onto my land. Again, but this time, they didn't know something. I reached up under the roof beam and pulled down the small black device I installed last week, a hidden camera. I went inside the house and loaded the footage onto my laptop. Timestamp, 2:17 a.m. A truck backed up near the creek. No headlights. 2 men stepped out. One of them I recognized immediately. Halbrook. The second man sprayed the X. Halbrook stood there watching. Then he said something clear enough for the camera mic to catch. Once the equipment rolls in, he won't stop it. He'll settle. My jaw tightened. Settle. He thought I'd panic. Thought I'd fold. But that wasn't even the worst part. At 2:24 a.m., another vehicle pulled up. An SUV. Karen stepped out. She didn't look nervous. She looked confident. She walked up to the shed, touched the wooden wall, and said something that made my stomach drop. By next week, this eyesore will be gone. Eyesore. My grandfather built that shed, before the subdivision ever existed, before Halbrook ever touched this land. I replayed the clip 3 times. Clear faces. Clear voices. Clear trespassing. I leaned back in my chair. They just handed me everything, but I didn't call the police. Not yet, because something still wasn't right. They wouldn't risk this unless they were desperate. Which meant one thing. Money had already moved. That evening, I drove into town. Not to the police station, to the county clerk's office. I asked for copies of any recent filings connected to parcel 47B. The clerk frowned slightly. There was an inquiry filed yesterday. Inquiry? Yes. A request to review boundary classifications. By who? She turned the screen toward me. Filed by Halbrook Development Group. Timing was perfect. They were trying to legally question my deed after being exposed publicly. I asked for copies. Then I asked one more question. Has any lien been filed against this property? The clerk hesitated. There is a pending notice. My pulse slowed. From who? Green Valley HOA. I stared at her. On what grounds? And paid community assessments. I almost laughed again. They were trying to legally attach my land to their HOA through a lien. If that lien stuck, even temporarily, it could complicate everything. This wasn't playground drama anymore. This was strategy. When I got back home, headlights flashed at the end of my driveway. Black SUV, not Karen's. This one had government plates. 2 men stepped out. Suits, not local. One of them walked up calmly. Are you the owner of parcel 47B? Yes. He showed a badge. State Land Commission. Now things got interesting. We received forwarded materials this morning, he said. Forwarded. So the footage I sent had reached higher than the county. Good. The second man opened a folder. We're investigating a series of easement manipulations tied to Halbrook Development. Manipulations. That word felt heavier than playgrounds. Apparently, the agent continued. Temporary construction easements were never properly dissolved in several subdivisions. I crossed my arms. Meaning some developers continued advertising access rights. They no longer legally controlled. Exactly what I suspected. Karen wasn't the mastermind. She was the loud face. Halbrook was the engine. Do you have evidence of trespass? The agent asked. I nodded slowly. More than that. I invited them inside. Showed them the footage. They watched silently. When the clip ended, the second agent looked at his partner. That's conspiracy, he said quietly. Not playground drama. Not HOA fines. Conspiracy. The first agent turned back to me. Do not engage further, he instructed. Let them make the next move. I almost smiled. That was my plan anyway. The next morning, Karen was back. But she didn't come yelling. She came with papers. Certified mail. I signed for it. Inside was a notice of special assessment vote. They were attempting to fast-track a community majority vote to claim historical access rights. If they could convince enough homeowners that the trail was essential, they'd try to pressure me socially. Smart, but desperate. That afternoon, 3 neighbors knocked on my door. Not angry, curious. We just want to understand, one of them said. Karen says you're blocking children from having a playground. I invited them inside, showed them the deed. Showed them the footage. One of them whispered, she told us you were threatening lawsuits. I haven't filed anything, I said calmly. Another neighbor frowned. She said you moved in and immediately tried to shut down community access. I locked my gate after someone damaged my pasture. They looked at each other. Then one of them asked quietly, did she really collect donations before securing land? I didn't answer directly. I just handed them a printed copy of the receipt flyer she distributed. They left quieter than they arrived. By evening, my phone started buzzing. Messages from unknown numbers. Not threats, questions. Is this true? Did she lie to us? She said you refused to compromise. Interesting how fast narratives flip when facts appear. But Karen wasn't done. At 9:47 p.m., flashing lights lit up my house. 3 police cars. I stepped outside slowly. An officer approached. We received a report that you threatened a board member with a firearm. I blinked once. What? The officer remained neutral. Did you make any threats toward Karen Halbrook this evening? Halbrook. She added his name now. No. I said calmly. I don't even own a firearm, which was true. He studied my face. Mind if we ask a few questions? Of course. 10 minutes later, they were back in their cars. False report. No evidence. But that wasn't the point. She was escalating, trying to paint me dangerous, unstable, push me into reacting. But here's the thing she still didn't know. The moment she filed that false police report, it triggered something automatic, because when the State Land Commission opened their investigation, they placed a temporary activity monitor on all filings connected to Parcel 47B, meaning any legal action, lien attempt, or police complaint tied to my property was being flagged automatically. She thought she was scaring me. She just alerted investigators. The next HOA meeting was chaos. Half the neighborhood showed up angry. Not at me. At her. Did you lie about the easement? Where did the money go? Why is there a lien attempt on private property? Karen's arrest didn't make the news the way she thought it would. No dramatic headline, no corrupt landowner exposed. Just a quiet county report about financial misrepresentation and unlawful lien filings. But Halbrook, he moved fast. 2 days after Karen was taken in for questioning, a thick envelope arrived from a high-powered law firm in the city, intent to file civil suit. They were challenging my boundary lines, claiming survey discrepancies and long-term community reliance. Big words. Big pressure. Most people would panic. That was the plan. I didn't respond. Instead, I drove straight to the county survey office and requested a re-verification of the boundary markers. Independent team. Fresh measurements. 3 days later, bright flags lined my property again. Every single marker matched. Not off by inches. Not off by feet. Exact. The surveyor looked at me and said quietly, "Whoever's challenging this knows they're wrong." That told me everything. That night, something unexpected happened. My phone rang. Not private. Halbrook's actual number. I answered. "This has gone too far," he said. "You broke into my land at 2 a.m. I replied calmly. "That footage won't hold up." "It already has." Silence. Then he tried a different tone. "You're hurting homeowners. Property values are dropping because of this mess." "No." I said. "Fraud hurts homeowners." Another pause. "You think Karen acted alone?" "There it was. The crack. You funded her." I said. "She made decisions. She followed your map." His breathing shifted. Then he said something that almost made me laugh. "Sell me the strip. Name your price." Weeks ago, he threatened me. Now he was negotiating. "I'm not selling. You don't understand what you're up against." I looked out my window toward the creek. The shed still stood there. The orange axe had long been painted over. "I understand exactly what I'm up against," I said. "And you're losing." He hung up. The next morning, the final piece fell into place. State investigators uncovered the money trail. HOA donations for the playground weren't sitting in a community account. They were transferred to a development holding company. Halbrook's holding company. The playground was never the goal. The goal was to convert my strip into official HOA land, then bundle it into a future expansion phase. More homes, higher prices, bigger profits. My barn and creek were in the middle of that blueprint. Karen wasn't just power hungry. She was promised something. Position. Percentage. Maybe both. When the arrest warrant came for Halbrook, it was early morning. Unmarked vehicles. Quiet. Professional. Neighbors watched from behind curtains. No cheering. Just silence. Because now they understood. This wasn't about a gate. It was about being lied to. Later that week, the HOA board voted unanimously to dissolve understate supervision. New elections scheduled. Financial audits ordered. The lien against my property removed. Formally dismissed. The false police report added to Karen's charges. And the civil lawsuit withdrawn. Just like that. One evening, about a month later, 3 kids stood outside my gate. Not angry. Not entitled. Just curious. "Are you really the guy who stopped the playground?" one of them asked. I smiled slightly. "No," I said, "I'm the guy who stopped someone from taking what wasn't theirs." They nodded slowly. Then one of them pointed toward the creek. "Can we still walk the trail?" I looked at the gate, then at the land, then back at them. "I'll tell you what," I said, "on weekends, I'll open it." Their faces lit up. "But," I added gently, "you respect it. No trash, no damage." They agreed instantly. And just like that, access returned. Not because someone demanded it. Not because of fake authority, but because it was offered freely. That's the difference. A few weeks later, a new HOA president knocked on my door. A quiet woman, former military spouse. "We want to apologize," she said simply. "You don't owe me anything," I replied. "We do," she said. "We followed no's instead of facts." She handed me a small plaque. Not fancy, just wood. It read, "Private property, protected with honor." I mounted it on the inside of my gate. Not as a warning, as a reminder. Because here's the truth. Karen thought power came from shouting loudest, from calling 911 first, from throwing around titles like HOA president. But real power is knowing your ground. Standing calm when someone tries to shake you, and letting them expose themselves. The shed still stands, the creek still runs, the gate still locks, and every time I press that remote, I remember the day Karen's son yelled into the phone, "He trapped us inside the neighborhood." No, I didn't trap anyone. I just locked my own gate, on my own land. And sometimes, that's all it takes.